Give me some reactions. Nice. Good. So today's session is related to KUMA release 3.4. We will have a slides. We will have a demo. Demo will be it will be in a video, short videos, because this release has plenty of features, and it would be hard to demonstrate all of them in the real time. We will try to be in time, but I already had 2 sessions for the same topic, and we couldn't finish in 1.5 hours, so we spent a little bit more. If you have questions, you can write them in the chat, or you can raise a hand and ask using your voice. So let's start. Good. Let's start. So many features in this release are related to user interface. So first, we've got full list of all the resources which we have in current installation. For example, we can have this list on the one page in a single table. You can filter this table using columns, etc. So you will see that in a demo. Also, we've got tagging option, so you can tag your resources. When I say resources, I mean rules, filters, normalizers, etc. Anything that you configure in KUMA. So you can tag your resources, and you can use these tags for searching and for kind of management of the resources. We also see this in a demo. Also, we've got graph resources dependency. So this graph is illustrating how your resources depends on each other. For example, if you want to change correlation rule, you probably will want to know which resources will be affected also. For example, I don't know in which correlators this particular rule is used. So you will see that in the graph. We will also see this in the demo. Also, KUMA is tracking versions of resources. When you edit resource, KUMA is creating new version, and you can restore old versions, and also you can compare versions. You can compare new and older versions in the interface. You will also see this in the demo. And we've got a full text search. In the previous releases, you could search through resources, but search worked only against the names. Now you can search through the content of the resources. We will also see that in the demo. This list of resources, you can filter them. You can hide or reveal particular type of resources. For instance, you may want to see only aggregation rules in the table. So you can filter that table using this column. So you can also see the path to the resource. Also, in the lower part of the screen, there's a total number of resources available. And here is a dependency graph on the screenshot. So the graph is showing all the resources that somehow connected to your resource. For instance, I'm not going to give an example right now. We'll see that in a demo. You can filter this graph. This graph is showing kind of cards with the information about the resource. You can click on each icon here and see the information. In these cards, there are links, and using these links, you can go to the exact resource and edit it, for example. Versioning. You can compare different versions of the same resource. So before 3.4 release, you could see that some resource has changed, but you couldn't see what exactly changed for that resource. Now you can compare and you can see what exactly changed inside of the resource. So you can compare code of the resource. And let's see that on the demo. So here we can switch to, yeah, I see that question. I will give you time later. So you can select resource and click show dependency button. And KUMA will create this graph for you. So in here, you will see all the resources connected to that resource that you selected. So you can filter that graph. There are kind of detailed information available. And here versions. So you can select resource and check older versions of that resource, and you can compare them. And here you can select which versions you want to compare. I saw the raised hand, so you can enable your mic and answer, ask the question. Any questions about that? Okay. Resource tagging. So you can assign tags to resources, and in the settings, there is a section tags where you can see all the tags that you created. And on this page, you also see the numbers, and those numbers are telling you that how many resources use this tag. So you can see the list of resources for a particular tag. And let's see also a short demo. Select. We can select any resource that we want, and there's a button tags, and there's a assign action. So you can create your own tags. For instance, demo tag. And here you can use this tag for searching. And also you can see all the tags that exists in your installation through the settings. I hear that there's a mic enabled. Oh yeah, that's Michael. I hear the questions. Why there is a requirement of downgrade to older version? I mean in screenshots. Could you explain what do you mean? These screenshots also they were created before the official release because there are a lot of features and I have had to cover them and release this what's new webinar. So I took the earlier versions of KUMA. There's no any requirement to downgrade the KUMA. Um, So on the screenshots in the presentation, you may see kind of older or lower versions of KUMA. So that's just because I created these demos on kind of beta releases. So before the official release. So don't don't worry about that. Thus, storing the additional information such as versions of resources will take additional space on KUMA core server. Of course, yes, but I don't think it will require much space. So that's kind of text information. It's JSON files stored in MongoDB, or currently all this stuff is moving to SQLite database anywhere. So it's a text information. It will not require too much space. It's kind of kilobytes. So you shouldn't worry about that. Any other questions?
Yeah, Maxim, can I have a quick one?
Yeah.
For the tags, is there any other practical thing you can do with them rather than searching? Maybe, well, I don't know, just want to understand better what's the background for the tags. Is it just to keep everything in place in the order?
Yeah. You can't use tags, for example, rights, granting rights. So it's just kind of for management. So, for instance, you may tag resources. Yeah, it's nothing special here. It's just for another option to manage and categorize your resources.
All right, I got that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go further. Full text search. So in this release, we've got full text search feature to enable that mode for searching. You have to click on this little icon near the searching window. So and it will enable full text search. You will see that in the demo. And using this mode, you can search for the content of the resources. I think it's better to show the demo. So here's a search window. I took the test string 234. Nothing is found. And then I turn on full text search and use the same string for searching. And I found one correlation rule. I found this rule because inside of this rule, I have this string in my selector. So I think you've got the idea that you can search through the resources content. Correlation rules. When you open list of correlation rules, there's a new column, correlators. Using this column, you can easily identify to which correlators you publish it rules. For instance, if you have a many correlators and large number of correlation rules, it might not be easy task to identify which rules publish it on which correlators. So using this column, you can manage this situation. And also, by the way, you can show rules which are not published to any correlator. So nothing special, but nice little feature. In release 3.2, we've got an ability to create custom fields in KUMA dataset, let's say. So we could create custom fields for our correlation logic or for something. And those custom fields should have a type. So you should explicitly say that this particular field should have a type string or string array or kind of number, etc. So in release 3.4, we still have this feature, but also we need to declare this. We need to explicitly declare these new custom fields before we can use them. And that's also for easier management. For instance, if you have a large KUMA installation, you have many administrators and they are creating something, creating custom fields. Probably you would like to see all the information about the custom fields on the single page. So now you have this option. And on this page, you can enable or disable these fields. So when you disable existing field, it will not be deleted from existing resources. Uh, you just blocking adding this field to new resources. For instance, you have some field and this field is used somewhere, but you want to delete that field. So what should you do? You should disable that. This will block usage of this field in the new resources, and then you can go to each resources and remove that field from the resource, and after that you will have ability to delete this particular field. So disabling, it's not deleting, it's just a disabling from usage in the new resources. It will work, it will still work in existing resources. Next feature is extended search query capabilities. So when you search for events, in some cases, you may want to add information about assets or accounts or tables or from tables or dictionary that you created in KUMA. You couldn't do that before 3.4, and you can do this in 3.4 release. Why? Any ideas why you couldn't do that? Any guesses? So the answer is that events, events are stored in ClickHouse database. This this data, assets, accounts, tables, dictionary, uh, they are stored in different database. It was MongoDB, but now it's MongoDB or SQLite. So we are moving all this stuff from one database to another. But the point is that events are stored in ClickHouse, and this information is stored in different database. So and you couldn't just couldn't do simple SQL join to join this data and get a combination of this data in the result. But now developers created some functions that can grab this data from these databases, let's say, and pull this data to the result. So you can combine data from ClickHouse and from assets, accounts, tables, and dictionaries, and combine them and see them in the result. So we have some set of functions, and you can use these functions in your queries. As you may see, we have a, let me go back a little bit. So we have two groups of functions, enrich functions and lookup functions. So enrich functions could be used in select. If you want to show some column with additional data, for instance, RAM size for your assets, you should use enrich assets function. If you want to show something about accounts, you should use enrich accounts function. But if you want to filter using these fields, for instance, you want to filter events using data from assets, so using kind of one of the assets attribute, like for instance, RAM size, you should use lookup functions. In other words, for select statement, you can use enrich functions. For where statement, you can use lookup functions. Inside of the lookup functions, you have to define the operation that you are going to perform. In this case, we are comparing RAM size of the asset with the explicit value, and if it's lower, then we are filtering, something like that. So in this example, we have a RAM size column in the result, but this RAM size is not present in the row event. It was taken from assets, from database where assets are stored. Any questions about that? Okay. Next feature is another improvement of the interface. So when you search events, sometimes what is the limit function? Do you mean limit 5,000? That's a, I will explain here. It's the same limit here. So when you when you're searching in a ClickHouse, so this is option is limiting the result number of rows in the result, because this impacts performance. So I think maximum is 50,000 rows, but default limit is 250. So just limiting results of the SQL query. Um, did I answer your question? Okay. So now, in this release, KUMA saves your search history in browser cache. So it saves 32 last searches. So it's your browser cache, and this history is not shared among the KUMA users. So it's only exists only in particular browser cache. So it saves your history, and you can from this history you can copy your queries, you can save them, uh, you can paste them in the main query window and then run query. And here are additional icons created for that. So here three icons. It's a copy to clipboard, save, paste in the main query window. This icon is related to data mining rule. So if you click this icon, the query from, let me go back, this query will be used for creating data mining rule. We will talk about data mining rules a little bit later, but you just need to remember right now that you can start creating your data mining rule just from this interface by clicking this icon. SQL history icon. So when you push that icon, click that icon, so you can show the history. When you click this icon, so you can open your search saved searches pane. I think would would be said. I think it's pane, kind of pane. Don't know in English how to say that correctly. So anyway, for saved searches, you can create structure of folders. So and you can save your searches and share them for all KUMA users. For instance, if the in the past, if you wanna share your query, probably you would copy it to kind of notepad and then save it somewhere or send it by email or messenger. Now you just need to save that in KUMA in this folder structure, and this saved query will be visible to other users. And also there are many actions that you can do with saved searches. Delete, edit, add them to favorites. So there's a favorites section. Copy to clipboard, set as default query when you open this interface. I mean this events. So KUMA paste default query here. So you can redefine which query will be used as default. Um, and let's see the demo. Sorry. So let's open the search history, query history. Yeah. So you can copy, save, insert query in the main query window, and then run this query. Create data mining rule. So we will cover data mining rules a few slides later. Let's try to save the query. So when you save the query, you have to give the name to that query. The name should be unique, and you have to select the folder where you want to save that. So the name should be unique. And let's open the saved query pen. And here's my query. So I can copy it, add to favorites, for instance. So favorites is here. So I can run it. Yeah, I think demo is finished. Any questions? Can we run multiple queries at time or only one? Um, I think if you open several tabs and open the same event interface, you can run multiple queries at the same time. But but if you're using only one tab in the browser, you can run only one query at the time. So data mining. Good. Data mining. So in a normal or standard situation in KUMA, we receive raw events. They go to the collectors, and then collector sends them in parallel to correlator and to storage. With data mining, we have one more option. So we can create query which will, on periodic basis, which this query will run on periodic basis against the storage and will take some information from that storage and send this information as events to correlator. It's not the same as a retroscan, so it's different. So retroscan is simply uh, sending events from storage to correlator, and that's it. But with data mining, you should create kind of aggregation query or grouped query. So you will see that. So it's more about kind of statistics rather than taking base events and sending them again to the correlator. You will see that in example. Let's see the demo. So I have no alerts right now, but at the end of the demo, we'll have alert generated by events created with data mining rule. So first you need to create data mining rule. I have already created that rule. Sorry. Yeah. So when you create the rule, you have to specify the frequency, how on what kind of schedule you will use for running this query. So in this example, I took once a day frequency. Then you have to specify the depth. So how many data you will use, not how many data, on which depth you will search in the storage using this query. So in this example, it's 24 hours in the past. And then you have to specify the query itself. So query should use grouping or aggregating functions. So in this case, I use group by and I use count function. So we are not just taking events from the storage and resending them to correlator. We're taking events, calculating something. For instance, here I calculate number of failed logon attempts for each user uh, in the past 24 hours. So I use this condition where device event class ID is 4625. 4625 event is related to failed logon attempt. So I'm taking the events and calculate how many failed logon attempts we've got for each user. And with this select, I create two columns in the result. First column will be destination username, and second column will be number of failed logon attempts. And these columns should be mapped to KUMA fields. So I do this in this lower part of the screen. So I map destination username to destination username field, and I map count ID, which is number, to device custom number string. And let's see what we have in the demo. So on the demo, I was slow, so we have to wait a little bit. So yeah, I closed this. And then when you create a rule, you have to click on this data mining icon and add this rule here. So I have already added this rule. So on this page, you see almost the same interface. You cannot create from this you cannot create rules from this interface, but you can change them. So from this interface, you've got almost the same page, but you have two more tabs: storage bindings, where you defined in which storage you will use this query, and correlator bindings, where you defined which correlators will work with this query. So it's maybe a little bit confusing, almost the same interface in two places, but we have to deal with that. So in this tab, you define storage spaces which will be used for searching data using this query. So probably for efficiency, you don't want to search through all existing spaces. For instance, if you know that you're searching for kind of base events, you can exclude space with audit KUMA events from searching. So there's no point. I didn't do that in this example. So, but so you can control in which spaces you are working with these data mining rules. And also you can define which correlators will process this data. So I have only one correlator, so added only one. So again, let me go back a little bit. First, we had no alerts. Then we created, sorry, it's hard to navigate this. Just wanted to explain how to navigate. So to create data mining rule, you have to scroll down and use this link to enable that rule. you have to go here, add this rule here, enable that, and define storage and define correlators, etc. Next, let's check the query itself. So that it's a query from data mining rule. This query is grouping data and showing this table. So it doesn't matter which data we have here. So they will not be sent to correlator. Only this left side is interesting here right now. So using this query, I created this table. So we have users here, 3 demo, 1 demo, kind of strange names. I generated them on the fly. So this is usernames. This is a count of failed logon attempts for this example. So we've got this table using this query. So this table will be sent to correlator, and each row will be sent as a separated event. So we have about, I think, 10 or 15 rows here. That means that 10 or 15 events will be generated with the data mining rule and will be sent to correlator. So we will not send these events. We will not send the base event. We will send kind of statistic created uh, by this request. Oh, sorry, misclicked. Yeah, and here ours the table. I see the questions. I will answer them a little bit later. So, and let's see what kind of correlation rule I created for this demo. So let's go to correlator. I created simple correlation rule, nothing special here. Just we'll see just what's inside. Simple rule. It doesn't matter right now what kind of propagated fields I specified. So the most interesting stuff is here. So on the selector, in the selector, in condition, I specified device custom number. If you remember, I saved count ID number to device custom number 1 field. And here I use this field to identify something. For instance, I'm triggering if I have a more than 5 failed logon attempts for 24 hours, that's this situation should trigger alert, something like that. So it's a kind of simple and synthetic example, but I think you've got an idea. So we can go to the storage, extract some data, calculate something like a count of something or average or something like that, uh, create kind of statistics and send this data to correlator and um, use correlation rules to trigger alerts based on that. I see the question, is there a graphical query builder when creating data mining rules? We have a builder for regular queries, and there is a little icon, create data mining rule. So you have to click that icon, but um, you can create your query in a main interface and then turn your query into data mining rule. Basically, yes, we have graphical builder, but I'm not sure. I don't remember. Probably in the builder, we don't have option to order. I don't remember actually. I don't use graphical builder, so. But technically, yes, we have a graphical builder. Um, are you planning to add a minimum set of correlation rules for basic security alerts? Um, do you mean data mining rules or you mean correlation rules? If you say about correlation rules, we already have a plenty of correlation rules in the packages available with the KUMA. So you have to, when you install KUMA, you have to configure updates from repository. It's in the settings, and then you run this update, and that's how you get the package with the rules. And we have, I think, 900 of the rules. So the short answer for the question is yes. We have we have a correlation rules available, let's say, out of the box. It's not out of the box. You have to run the update from repository, but you can get them for free. It's not hard. It's fast, easy operation. Did I answer your question? Any other questions related to data mining? Or let's wait for question and see the demo till the end. So I've got simple correlation rule based on the conditions that I generate. So nothing special here in actions, just a regular simple correlation rule. And my rule, I configured this rule to run it once a day, but I don't want to wait for the whole day, so I can manually trigger a run. So if you remember in the beginning of the demo, we didn't have any alerts. So this alert is just, it's not related to our demo. So we should see, yeah, this alert, this one, 4625. So if you open that alert, you will see our events. So it's a destination name, demo user, device custom number 1, 11, 11 attempts of logon, failed attempts, etc. So we've got all these events. Um, yeah, let's open some of them. So if we open this event, we have it's a kind of simple event because in the select, I created only 2 columns, destination username and count of failed logon attempts. And also I mapped these columns to these fields and I've got this event. The type is based, but I would say that it's slightly different than base. It's a synthetic event generated on the fly when we run uh, data mining rule. So it's not came from collector. It's not came from agent or something like that. It was generated by data mining engine, generated and sent to correlator. It's not stored in storage. When we trigger alert, all base events are stored inside of alert. But if alert would not be triggered, you wouldn't see this event. It would be generated, sent to correlator, and then gone. So it's not saved anywhere. Um, and let's see what. Yeah, I think we've done with the demo. That's a kind of correlated event. Nothing special here. Any questions about data mining? That's a quite kind of complex topic for explanation. So don't hesitate to ask a question. Okay, if there's no, or if you have a question, you can also ask the question in the end of the webinar. Let's go further. For correlation rules, we have a setting. Yeah, if you have a questions later, yeah, you can always ask me. Um, Forgot to say something about data mining. So with this example that I gave you, that's a kind of synthetic and simple example about counting failed logon attempts. You could do the same without data mining in the previous releases of KUMA. You could create a correlation rule, which is counting failed logon attempts. If you want to count on short distance, for instance, during a few hours, that's a simple case, and you just create the rule, which is have a time window for 1 hour, for example, and then you counting number of failed logon attempts, and if the number is bigger than something, you trigger alert. That's a kind of simple correlation logic. But if you wanna track and count these failed logon attempts during a week or a day or a month, uh, you would need to create something else for that. In the previous release, you will have to had to create you had to create active lists to save these events or and to count failed logon attempts for a week or for a month, because you cannot technically you can, but it's not wise to uh, create correlation rule with the time window equal to week or a month, etc. So you need need to create something else like active list, and you could you could implement the same logic with the in the previous releases of KUMA, but it it was quite challenging. So you had to create a lot of things to enable that. But with data mining, it's got much simpler. So you just grab events from the storage, um, grouping them, calculating something using aggregation functions, and then sending all this stuff to correlator. So it's much simpler right now. Um, Next, unique fields. When you create rules in the correlation rules, uh, if you specify unique fields, that means that you are taking events, uh, kind of similar events, where some fields are unique. For instance, um, usernames, like in this example. You're taking some events, and for correlation logic, those events should be different. So now you can enable this feature, use a unique fields mapping. You can save these unique fields from your base events in correlation events later. I I know I'm not sure if we have a yeah if we'll have a demo some about that, but in correlation events you can see all the values from unique fields that was catched by your correlation rule. So you could, in the previous releases, you could see this, for example, usernames, but you had to open base events from alert and inspect them one by one. But now it's got simpler for analysis. So probably when you create, if you create correlation rule and you specify unique fields in the settings, probably when you will analyze this alert, you will want to see what inside of these unique fields. So, and using this feature, you can save this information right in correlation rule. You don't need to go to base events and inspect them one by one to identify these usernames. So I think you've got an idea. So it's just this you can give more visibility for some information for analytics. Another feature is related to the agent. Now you can track, uh, by the way, any questions about unique fields. I said that we will have a demo, but there's no demo. I forgot about that. So any questions about that? I think that's concept is quite simple. Okay, next feature. In the agent, we've got a new setting, track event route. For this mainly, I think you will want to use that for kind of diagnostics stuff. When you create collectors, agents, when you set up all these things in the KUMA, when you receiving the events, sending them correlator, probably you will want to check which events came from which source, what kind of the route they have, from which agent you receive particular kind of events, etc. So you can enable this track event route feature, and then uh, KUMA will save this event route information in these fields. We have these two fields. First is related to kind of technical information with the IDs. The second is the same, but it's kind of easier to read for the human. To use this feature, your agent should use internal protocol. So agent can send events to collector using different kind of protocols like TCP, UDP, HTTP, and internal. For this feature, you have to use internal protocol if you want to use that. Also, another feature for the agent, each agent can have multiple connections. For instance, from using one agent, you can connect to WMI sources. And also you can connect in the same agent to log files and read information from there. So for these reasons, you create multiple collections. In the previous KUMA versions, you couldn't name them. You just saw configuration 1, configuration 2 tab, several tabs with different connection, but you couldn't give them a name. So now you can name them for easier management, for better visibility, etc. And also we've got a duplicate button, so you can duplicate connection rather creating a new connection from the scratch. Also, with the agent and with the collector, you can use a new kind of connector. It's an Office 365 connector. With this connector, you can receive events from Microsoft Azure, from Office 365. Uh, Configuration is simple. I will not show the demo because I don't have a Azure tenant available for test, but configuration quite simple. So in Azure, you have to create app, new app registration. This registration it's a kind of object which will have an ID, and you can use this ID for connecting to this source of events. And in the Azure, you will have to generate secret for connecting. That could be a certificate or token. So quite simple. Next feature of the agent, when you read from the file, you have a couple new options. When you read from a file and the file hasn't changed for example 10 seconds, you can rename that file automatically or delete. So I think that's also simple concept. In the previous releases, we had only one option. You couldn't choose anything. So do nothing. So Kuma read the file. File is not hasn't changed, and Kuma just waiting for the changes. But now you can set another logic. So if the file hasn't changed for some period of time, you can rename that file or delete. So in later, Kuma will not read this file again. So I see the question for Office 365. The connection will be initiated by Kuma to fetch logs from Azure. Yes. Yes, I think yes. I haven't tried this connection by myself, but according to what I read and what I saw in the documentation, yes, Kuma will initiate the connection. So there's no any active agent in Azure which will connect to Kuma and send something. So it's a Kuma connecting to Azure. Next feature of the agent, when you read from the file, you can save file name and path to the file to uh, to event fields. In this, so this is done through built-in variables, so you can see them. So they are starting from dollar symbol. So you don't have to create these variables; they exist by default. So and agent save file name and path to the file with the file name to these variables. Again, for this feature, agent should use internal protocol, not TCP, not UDP, internal. So, and then you can read from these variables, read values from these variables and map this and save these values to fields in Kuma. In my case, I created custom fields for that, but you can use any string field that you want, device custom string one or something like that. So for this example, I created custom fields and created this mapping. I didn't create these variables, and that's it. And let's see the short demo. So I open any kind of basic event from the file. So and there's two fields that I created by myself. So there's a file name and path to the file. So next I open the collector. In the collector, I go to event parsing and open my normalizer. And inside of that normalizer, I created this mapping. So it's grayed out here because I opened collector. But to change that, you should open normalizer, not collector and then normalizer. Just go to resources and open normalizer, and it will be available for modifying. Any questions about this, about agent, Office 365? Okay, let's go further. New cool feature, IE scoring. This feature can dynamically calculate score for your assets. And this score is a number between 0 and 1. So it's could be 0.25, for example, or 0.55 or 50 or 65 or something. So number between 0 and 1. So this score reflects the kind of I don't know how it's hard to say in English for me, criticality maybe. So this score is calculated by IE service, which is calculating this score every hour for each asset which you have in KUMA. So the logic of this calculation is hidden, so it's a kind of black box. But from my experiments in KUMA, what I found, if my asset, if the computer, which is asset in KUMA, often appears in different kind of alerts in KUMA, IE will mark them with a higher score. So it will have a like a 0.50 or 0.80 or something like that, or even just one. So it highest it's the most critical score that asset can have. So dynamically, this IE service calculating the score for each asset. Uh, IE service takes events by default. It takes events from the past to calculate the score. So it's learns these events, check checks if the asset is appears in the events, and if asset appears in the kind of events or alerts frequently, it will get a higher score. It will be critical or high or something like that. Um, this service should be installed separately. I mean it's not installed with KUMA by default. So you have to open KUMA distributive, find a file with this ML IE service. So it's a machine learning some ML something. I don't know, don't remember exact the name of the file, but you have to find that file, run the installation, and install it. You can install this service on the KUMA core service or any other server, KUMA core server. So you can install it anywhere you like. So, but you have to do this manually. It's not installed by default with the KUMA. This service has its own configuration files. Inside this configuration file, you can configure. There are two files. In one of them, you have to configure. You don't have to, but you can configure number of days uh, for the IE to take the events. So the logic is here. So by default is 12 days. When this IE service will take events from 12 days in the past and search through the learn based on and learn against these events. So if you want to learn against a larger or smaller number of days in the past, you can configure that for a week or for a month, etc. So the logic is that it takes events from the storage and then calculate score based on that events for each asset. And this calculation occurs every hour. So every hour, this IE service recalculates the score for each asset and write the result in attributes of the assets. There are two attributes, score IE and status. Score IE is a number, status is a word related to the number. So, for instance, in the documentation, we have information about that, but for example, score between 0 and 0.25 is low status. We, if the score is bigger than 0.25 but less than 0.50, it would be a medium, something like that. So this interval from 0 to 1 split into four parts, and you have a status in a string. So you can use any of these fields for your correlation logic. So how you can use that? Um, so in the past, versions of KUMA, you couldn't do that. So you had to, you can do maybe something like that using kind of active lists or dictionaries or something like this. But now you can dynamically calculate the score uh, for each asset and use this score in the correlation logic. For instance, for normal assets, which has a score 0, some situations could be normal and typical, and you shouldn't trigger an alert. But if this asset has a higher score, critical, some situations uh, looks very suspicious if they occur on this kind of assets. Um, and if you have a questions about that, it's time to ask. So I see one question. iService requires extra hardware resources. I don't remember if we have any guides for that in the documentation, but definitely yes, it requires some resources. In my environment, I had only 3 assets, and this calculating worked very fast. But I haven't tested that in production environments. Oh yeah, thank you, Alexei. Yeah. So yeah, we have some guides probably for hardware resources for this feature. What does the assistant does in this service? What kind of assistant do you have? Do you mean? Yeah, I've got Kaspersky Investigation and Response Assistant. Good questions. Good question. But this is a new feature, and I don't cover this feature in this webinar because this feature is not available worldwide. It's available only in Russia, I think, currently. Uh, Briefly, it's the second AI feature in KUMA. So it's this feature allows you to send details from your event to artificial intelligence service. For example, ChatGPT or something like that, and ChatGPT will say you if it's dangerous or not. For instance, you've got an event and you see kind of command or script code in one of the fields. You can send this command or script to the IE service and receive kind of conclusion if it's safe or not and description for which purposes usually this command used. It's easier for analysis. For instance, you've got event and you see the command certutil. You don't know what is certutil. You can Google that, but instead of this, you can push the button and set request to AI, and it will answer that this util is used for kind of certificate operations with a certificate. It's usually it's safe to use that utility, but in some cases it could be used for kind of obfuscation. So you should be aware of that. So nice feature. Unfortunately, it's not available right now for the worldwide sailing, but I think it somewhere it will. So, but it's available only in Russia right now. It requires additional license. It's a very cool feature, but in this release, at least, it's not available worldwide. So that's why I'm not covering this feature in this webinar. So, but thank you for the question. Thank you for the reading the slides. So, did I answer your question? Okay, let's go further. Correlation rule exclusions. So you can in this release, you can create exclusions for correlation rules. They are temporary. For instance, um, you, you see that some user is generating kind of alerts in KUMA. So you investigate the situation and see that this user is used for testing or something like that, and this user will be used for testing for several days, and it's safe to ignore these alerts. So in this case, instead of changing correlation or logic, you can simply add this user to exclusions. And this exclusion will work by default, will work for 1 week, and then will be deleted, and your correlator will work again with the previous logic. So idea is simple: create temp exclusions. Um, one one thing to mention here, to enable, when you open the event, there is a action add exclusion, but this item, menu item, is available only when you go to the alert, then you go to the find events, and then you open events. So if you go through this kind of workflow or path, then you will see this item on each in each event field. So you will see that in the demo. If you just select events from the storage and open any of the events from the result, you will not see this item. So you will see this only if you open these events from alert. We will see that in the demo. Yeah. So here's my alert. I push find in events button, and that's how I find linked events linked to the alert. So when you open any of these correlated events, so you have this action, add to exclusion. So you have this action on each field that present in the event. So you can add any value to exclusion. So you can open correlation rule and check exclusions for this particular correlation rule. So there is a new tab, exclusions. So for this particular correlation rule, you can delete this exclusion. By default, this exclusion will be deleted automatically after 7 days. So you can reconfigure this TTL for the exclusion. I will show you in the demo that later. But you can also manually delete these exclusions. Also, you can check exclusions for all your rules. For that, you have to open correlation rules, and here, new item in the menu, exclusion list. So in here is a list for all your correlation rules. In the settings, you can configure TTL for the exclusions. So you have to go to the command section, and here is a core rule exclusion TTL hours. It's by default, it's 1 week. Any questions about this? Okay. Next feature is a granular event access control. So you can, in this release, you can give rights for accessing events to user in a more flexible or granular way. I think I should show the next slide. So We have events. So logic of this mechanism is described here. We have events. Events, when you receive them in the KUMA, they go into spaces. Spaces, it's a logical division of the events inside of the ClickHouse. So each space could be configured for with the different settings. For instance, a space containing audit messages should be stored longer than a space containing kind of network events, etc. So you divide all incoming events into spaces, and then you can add these spaces to space sets. And these space sets could be used for granting access to the events. Each space um, can belong to more than one space set. Each user can be associated, let's say, with a more than one space set. So kind of flexible structure. Um, and that's how you can control access to your events. For instance, you have analyst, and this analyst should have access to all events except audit events. So you can do this with this mechanism. You need to create space sets, including all the events except audit space. And then you assign this space set to the user, and that user will see only uh, will see all the events except audit space. Any questions about this? Do we have any templates for divide the events into spaces? No. You have to divide events into spaces by yourself. By default, we have only two spaces: audit events and default space, I think. So, but you can create your own spaces. Spaces needed not only for granting access, but also for deleting the all events from storage. We cannot delete events one by one from the ClickHouse. Or probably we can if we go to the ClickHouse interface and from command line we can do something. But from KUMA interface we cannot do that. So we operate with the spaces, or not with the spaces, with partitions. So these spaces create partitions which are have which has a groups of events. So there is no predefined spaces except audit events and default. You have to create them by yourself. So you can create them using filters. For instance, all the events from particular agent or from particular computer should fall into the specific space, and this space should be stored for 5 days only, something like this. Uh, you can edit spaces after creation. You can open space and edit the filter. So you can create new spaces, you can edit them. Uh, I think you cannot edit default spaces like space default or audit messages, but I don't remember exactly about that. But for sure, when you create space, you can then edit this space. You can even delete that space. So yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Retention settings. So for storage, we have a retention policy, which defines for how long should we store events. So you can configure this retention for the storage, for the whole storage, or you can configure these settings per space. In the past, you could do only configuration related to the number of days for storing events. But with this release, you can also specify another condition related to the size Uh, for instance, if events take more than 2 GB, uh, sorry, I have to rephrase that. So you can store events depending on the this number of days. After on 31 day, for instance, events will be deleted. Events older than 30 days will be deleted in this case. Um, and you have new condition related to gigabytes if you want to use absolute values, or percents if you want to use relative. So in this case, you will delete events uh, after old events, after the after you occupied 2 GB. So that's how you can control the storage usage. You can configure that per space, or yeah, per space. And because of this changed logic in the configuration, um, we had to change our approach to calculating total time for event storing. So TTL for the particular event. So in KUMA 3.2 and earlier, we configured a number of days for hot storage and number of days for cold storage. And after that, we could calculate the TTL for the event. But now in 3.4 release, we configure number of days uh, for hot storage and TTL number, and then uh, and number and period or retention in the cold storage is calculated dynamically. Um, any questions about this? No questions. Okay. Next feature, relative time intervals in the interface. So when you run a query, when you search for events or in dashboards, or when you do kind of asset categorization, you can use relative intervals. So it uses Kibana, kind of Kibana, not language, it's a Kibana syntax for these functions. So and this feature gives you flexibility. So you can say that I'm searching for events starting from this week till now. So you can do this. So this syntax is quite simple. We have a pre-created patterns for different kind of situations and conditions. So just exploring these patterns, you can easily understand how to create your own custom conditions for that. We support, not we, it's a Kibana. So Kibana supports math operations here. So you can take current time and do the -1 hour, and then use this interval in your conditions. So, or you can -1 hour and then -1 second or something like that. So you can use math operations here. Uh, any questions about this? Quite easy to use. Just explore these patterns and you will understand. I guarantee you will understand the logic of this. Also, we have assets in KUMA, and assets can be categorized. So, and they could be categorized using conditions. In these conditions, we can use attributes of assets. In this release, we've got more attributes available for this kind of conditions. Also, in the conditions, you can use a relative time. For instance, you can take all assets that hasn't updated antivirus, anti-malware databases since yesterday using a relative interval and put them in the specific category and you use this fact in your correlation logic. So something like this. Um, sorry. Yeah. Also, we have a new type of diagram in dashboard. It's a stacked diagram, and also in dashboard you can use relative time intervals, and also you can combine data from events and from asset account and dictionaries. It's that thing that we discussed in the beginning of the webinar. So when you can combine uh, different kind of data using enrich and lookup functions. So you can use this in dashboard queries. And let's see a demo related to this kind of diagram. So this diagram is uh, kind of it's a new type of the diagram. And what do we have here? We have here 4 categories based on the vendor name. Microsoft, empty, it's from events where there's no vendor name in the field. All events from Kaspersky, all events from Unix systems. So these categories based on vendor name in the events. Inside of each of these categories, we can have a kind of subcategories. So for Microsoft, we have a different subcategories like, and I based them on the product name. For instance, from Sysmon events, from DNS server, events from configuration manager, events from the Windows, etc. So the the interesting part here is that we create categories inside of the categories. It's a kind of double categorization. And now we can use this to build a chart. Let's see how I created this chart. So new type of the chart. It's a stacked bar chart. You can use absolute or relative values. For this example, relative values looks more interesting. So you can choose, again, using relative time, you can choose time period for which you are showing a data in the chart. So you can use relative intervals here. Also, there's a feature, show data for previous period. If you enable that, it will create another column for previous 24 hours. For instance, on this chart, in this chart, we are selecting events from 24 hours in the past and building these columns based on that information. But if you enable this feature, it will KUMA will take data from another 24 hours in the past. So we will have 2 columns for 48 hours in total, and we can compare them. I think you will understand better from the demo. So and here's a query, the most interesting part here. To build this type of diagram, you have to use these names for your fields in select. So you have to use these aliases: metric, value, and category. So you can not use your own names for this type of diagram. And here I'm doing double grouping. I'm grouping by device vendor, and then I group for device product name. So Microsoft, and inside of this big Microsoft category, there are products. So kind of double grouping. And nothing interesting. So you can change, adjust this widget. Nothing special here. I will scroll forward because we are out of time. Sorry about that. Too much information for the single webinar. You can create your own categories on widgets. Uh, in this example, I defined my own categories. So I selecting information from assets uh, list. So, and I'm saying that I want to have three categories: not enough RAM, and more than enough. So, and I defined conditions for each category. So you can create your own categories. I will scroll further. The same with the time. For this example, I also grabbed data from assets, but now I take field containing date of the antivirus database. So and I created three custom categories like today, yesterday, and antique. So very old databases. So and I defined them using these relative time intervals. So um, and also in the dashboard, you can use these functions. I've already mentioned them. Any questions about this? Uh, okay, let's go further. When you create correlation rules, you can use variables inside of the selector. So in these variables, you can use different kind of functions. Before this release, you had to open online help and check the syntax of the functions. Now you don't have to do that. You just can press Control Space keys, and KUMA will show you help right in the interface. Next feature is a improvement in the event sources policies. For the monitoring event sources, you can define policies. For instance, you want to track if your source is healthy. So you, for example, you know that in normal situation in a working day, your source should send some amount of events per second. For instance, 10 EPS. So if it falls below 10, then probably something wrong happened with this source. It's broken or something like that. So you have to be notified about that, and then you have to investigate this situation. Or opposite, maybe you expect maximum 10 EPS from particular source, but this source is starting to send more than 10, 20, or 50 EPS. So that also means that something went wrong or something changed in the system. And also you need to investigate this situation and adjust your policies or do something with that. So you could do this in the previous releases, but now it's became more flexible. So you can have a flexible schedule. You can use days of weeks. For instance, from Monday to Thursday, you expect that you will have a intensive flow of the events from 9 p.m. to 6 p.m. After that, you expect that the flow will be lower, so less intensive. So, and you will have to apply different monitoring policy. Also, you may have additional working days in your schedule or additional holiday days. You can also configure these days in your policies, and your policy will change the behavior according to this schedule. So it's very hard to explain this feature in the webinar. You have to play with that in your lab environment. So I will not spend the time trying to explain that, but you can create flexible monitoring policies for that. And let's see the demo. And at the end of the webinar, we'll have a few more slides. You'll be able to answer the questions. So you can add days of weeks. Um, in this example, I created several policies. Two for normal situation, like regular working days uh, and working hours during these days. Another policy for non-working hours for regular days. And also, yeah, I created additional two policies for holidays. So probably you could combine all these settings in the two policies. But I decided to create four just for simplicity. Another feature is that here is that you can apply policy to the multiple event sources at the same time. You so in my lab I have a 25 sources. I have a small lab, but still I have 25 sources. In the real installation, you would have probably hundreds of sources, and if you need apply policy to dozens of your sources, it could be challenging. You in the previous releases you had to click them one by one and apply this policy, but now you can do multi-select and apply this policy for multiple sources at the same time. Also, for each source, you can see the diagram reflecting the flow of the events. But with this release, you can compare these diagrams. So you can select multiple sources and say that build a common chart for me. And this on this chart, you can visually compare events from amount of the events from each of the selected sources. And let's go further. A few more slides. Sorry that it take too long for webinar, but still. Next feature is a Sigma rule converter. Sigma project, probably you know, but I will explain in a short. So we have in the world, we have many security vendors like Kaspersky and other Microsoft, anything else. So these vendors create kind of content for their systems, correlation rules, filters, queries, etc. And see, the problem is that sometimes you want to share this content and export or import this content to different kind of systems, but these systems has their own syntax. So the Sigma project was created to bring kind of order into this area. So common format for this kind of content for security systems. So and also we started to work in this direction with the KUMA. So it's just a beginning. It's not kind of mature tool for converting. It's just a kind of beginning of the long way for this. But idea is here that you can take a Sigma rule which you receive from third-party vendor or from kind of community, and then you can convert this rule in the KUMA format and import this content in the KUMA. For example, what you can get, you can take Sigma rule and convert it into the JSON file reflecting the logic of simple correlation rule. Um, and then you can import this JSON file into KUMA, but it's not easy right now. You have to use API to import this JSON file. So you have to be familiar with the KUMA API to be able to import this kind of JSON files. And it's working only for simple rules. It doesn't work for standard rules. So when you have a multiple selectors, it's not available in this release of this feature. Also, you can convert Sigma rule to KUMA filter code and use this filter in your correlation rules or somewhere else for your spaces or something like that. Also, you can convert Sigma rule into KUMA SQL query for ClickHouse. You can install this converter by yourself. Not you can, you must. You can clone this project from GitHub. This service, this installation, is not related to KUMA installations. It's totally different kind of product. It's just shipped with a KUMA, but it's technically it's a standalone service, not related to KUMA services at all. So you just install it, and then you get a web interface, and then you can work with that. So it's just the beginning, kind of probably MVP or something like that, but we started to work in this direction. And here are a couple of slides with smaller improvements and smaller new features in KUMA. I will not read all of them, just will show you, and later on the video you can investigate. So this list is based on release notes. And also we have some deprecated content, deprecated normalizers, etc. So we've done with the presentation, and it's time for questions. You can type your questions or ask them using your mic. I will stop the recording